Okay, so for this lesson, you will definitely need a graphing calculator. It will help you to graph all of the functions. So today's lesson is actually going to be broken up into 3 parts over 3 days, or you can choose to do it all at once. It's kind of up to you. So the learning target for this lesson is I can identify transformation of parent functions. So parent functions, that sounds funny, but those are just like the basic functions of all of those types of graphs. So for example, y equals x is like the basic function for all lines. All other lines are basically just transformations of those. Quadratics are y equals x squared with the basic parabolas for those types of functions, and the same with exponential and square root and absolute value. All other types of functions are just transformations of those functions. So the first thing we're going to do is kind of start off by plotting or sketching more like pictures of each of the basic graphs, and we're going to kind of look at the things that they do. So you can use your graphing calculator for this, but basically you're just going to go through and you are going to graph each of these types of lines. So first one is y equals x. That's the basic line. So if I go to graph it, you can start with 0, 0. That's where I usually start. And you'll notice it goes 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, which is just going to be those points there. And I know this is really small, so just do your best, but it's basically the line that goes directly diagonal through each of the points. So that is like the basic line. You'll notice it goes through 0, 0, which most of these lines will. Okay, it's positive slope, all of those things. So that's the basic lines. I can shift that line up or down. I can stretch it. I can shift it left or right. But that is the basic standard line. So that's like the parent of all of the other lines. All the other lines are based off that. So same thing with quadratic. So x squared will look like this. And it'll just be the basic parabola that goes through 0, 0. So when I go to graph it, you'll have 0, 0, 1, 1, 2, 4. So I know it's hard to see. If you need to just kind of sketch it, that's fine. I know it's kind of hard to see here. So just kind of sketch it so you have an idea of what it looks like. Okay, but you'll notice that the vertex of this is 0, 0. So that's the basic function of there. Exponential, so if you want to take a minute and kind of go through these, exponential doesn't have a basic function, but the basic function of anything doubling is 2 to the x, and I could shift that up, down, left, right. And the basic function of tripling something would be this function. So anything is just whatever the factor to the x power. So if I graph that, you can take a minute, you can pause the video and graph the rest of these. Okay, so this is what all of those parent functions should look like. So they're just the basic functions. You'll notice that this one stems from 0, 0. Absolute value the vertex is at 0, 0. So they're just the basic functions. So transformations are movements performed on the parent functions. These are patterns that make up rules. So first we're going to talk about vertical shifts, which is up and down. So we're going to look at some patterns and some functions and some rules. So it says let f of x equal x squared, which is the graph we did up here. If I want to shift the parabola up 2 units, I can write that as take f of x and add 2 to it, or I can add 2 to the outside of the x squared. Okay, so on the graph to the right, graph f of x and y equals f of x. So this just means shift up 2. Okay, so the basic parabola of y equals x squared, you can take a minute and graph that. If you have to pause the video to do that, please do. So that's x squared, right? If you're not sure, okay, I don't know how to shift it up, this is why this form of the equation is helpful. So up 2 units is added on to the f of x here, or you can type that right in your calculator. So if you need to, type that right in your calculator. And if you go to the table, it looks like this. So 0, 2. I want to graph in a different color just so I can kind of see it. And you'll notice that everything will shift up to 2 points. So your parabola will look like that, and that is x squared plus 2. Okay, so anything added to the outside of parentheses will shift the graph up. And you'll see this as we go through and do some other ones. So if you flip the page, there's practice here. So you're going to just kind of go through and graph both of these. This is the parent, this is the transformation. What was the shift? Graph this, graph the transformation, what was the shift? Graph this, what was the shift? Graph this, what was the shift? And then we'll kind of come back and talk about the rules. So take a minute, pause the video, and graph these on your own, and then we're going to talk about the rule here. So you should have seen this one shifted down 3, minus 3 is on the outside. This one shifted up 5, 5 is on the outside of the square root. This one shifted down 4, this was outside of the exponent. And this was down 8, and this was after the x. So anytime a number is being added or subtracted outside the parentheses, absolute value sign, or square root symbol, the graph shifts up or down. Okay. So when transformations are written like this, if we let f of x equal x squared and g of x equals f of x minus 2, that means to take the original function, which is f of x, and shift it down 2. So take the original function and go down 2. G of x in standard form can now be written by adding a 2, or subtracting, this should say subtracting, 2 to the outside of x squared. So the original function, g of x, will now be the original function, which was x squared, and then I want to shift it down 2, so I add it outside of the exponent. It's just outside and add it on to the end. So this is the same thing as shifting it down 2. Okay, and so if you you flip over the page, there's just practice on how to write it in standard form. So this will tell you, write the equation of the transformation in standard form. So f of x is x squared. This means I want to shift up 6. So to write that in standard form, I just take the original equation and I would add 6 onto the end. Okay. For this one, it wants me to take g of x and shift it. This means shift down 1. So I would just take my original function, which is the absolute value of x, and I would subtract 1 on the outside of the absolute value, parentheses, square root, anything else. So take a minute, and this is the practice for the horizontal shifts, and then you're done with the horizontal shifts. The next video we'll talk about, this is the vertical shifts. You're done with the vertical shifts. The next video will focus on horizontal shifts.